Hi, I'm Chuck Quinton, founder of RotarySwing.com and creator of the Rotary Swing Tour method that you're about to learn. We get asked all the time, what exactly is Rotary Swing and what is it all about? Well, the simplest answer is this. It's the only and the first approach to the golf swing that's completely objective and based on pure science, nothing about personal opinion or preference or bias or any of that stuff. And what do I mean by that? Well, you've probably taken a golf lesson or two, or you've watched a couple golf videos online at this point, and you found undoubtedly that pretty much everybody contradicts what the other golfer said. And that is incredibly frustrating because as a golfer, you don't know who's right and who's wrong and what they're basing their information off of. Almost inevitably, you typically find from most golf instructors is they teach based on what they found works on their own golf swing. What they found, if they slice the ball and they strengthen their grip, like, hey, well, you need to strengthen your grip. Well, Rotary Swing doesn't approach the swing like that at all. In fact, we don't even care how the tour pros swing. That may sound like blasphemy, but the reality is 81% of the tour pros on the PGA Tour will miss 9 weeks for a golf swing related injury. And they consider those injuries chronic, meaning they're continuing to struggle with these injury problems. And with RST, we designed everything with the help of a group of orthopedic surgeons and neurosurgeons and PhD biomechanists to make sure that it's as injury-free and injury-proof as it possibly can be, because golf isn't a contact sport. You shouldn't get injured playing golf. There's guys in the NFL that get injured less often than the guys on the tour. And that's because it's not that they're not great ball strikers. Obviously, to be on the PGA Tour, you got to be a great ball striker. But their movement patterns are fighting their bodies. And that's why not only the guys on the PGA Tour, but the average amateur golfer watching golf instruction videos online gets injured very frequently as well. And all of these things can be prevented. We took the time to study the swing from the inside out and look at it from a scientific perspective. And we look at the biomechanics, the anatomy of the human body, and the physics that are being exerted on the golf club. And then lastly, we took a look at the neuromechanics, or how your brain actually learns these new movement patterns. And so that is how the RST swing system was developed. It's meant to be completely objective and nothing about anyone, not even my own personal bias or preference. We teach you fundamentals of the golf swing. And even that term is something that not everybody can agree on. But as you'll watch my swing fundamentals video, you'll understand that we look at fundamentals, again, very black and white, very objectively, and these things can't be argued. So, but now let's take a look at some big picture stuff, and then we're going to dive into the overview of the actual golf swing itself, and it's going to answer a lot of questions about what RST is. One thing that I want to make clear is that rotary swing is not a symptomatic approach to the golf swing. What I mean by that is most golf instruction looks at ball flight and says, well, you're doing this, so we're going to find some band-aid to fix what the ball is doing. In reality, obviously the end goal is to make the ball fly the way that you want it to, but we don't really care about that at first. We're going to look at what's causing the ball flight rather than put a band-aid on your golf swing and try to fix the ball flight that way. So we take a cause and effect approach to the golf swing, and we look at your primary motor movements, your body, because it's the way that your body moves that's going to affect what the golf club does, not the other way around. You don't fix the golf club to fix a ball flight problem. If you're swinging over the top and slicing, we are going to fix what the force of movement and how your body's movement, how you're set up, and that's causing the club to move over the top rather than just telling you to start rerouting the club. That doesn't work, you know that. So we look at it as we're going to go in and cut the cancer out rather than just putting a band-aid over your cancer. And that, again, is very different to how most golf instruction is done. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff and you're sick of these conflicting tips and these band-aid approaches to the swing, then listen up, because now I'm going to go into what the rotary swing is exactly. So the first thing is, it all starts with setup. The spine angle and all of the angles that you created address are critical. And I'm going to do an overview here of what the RST whole golf swing is in a nutshell. But of course, on the site, we go in much more in depth. But I want to give you just the big picture stuff. So first of all, a couple key fundamentals at setup we talk a lot about stance width. It's going to be 2 inches outside of neutral with your pelvis. So we don't have this giant wide stance. If you have that, it's because your force of movement is coming from the wrong place, I promise you. So 2 inches outside of neutral, axis tilt, critical for getting the club on plane, to stop swinging over the top, to stop the reverse pivot. That's how we're going to get set up. and you're going to look a bit like this. As we go back, the movement is going to be like every other athletic movement that you've ever done in your life. If you've ever thrown a ball, I guarantee you shifted your weight to your back leg, and then you shifted your weight to your front leg, and then you rotated your pelvis, and then that rotated your torso, and then you released the ball. The golf swing for rotary swing, not any different. The reason? From the time that we were chucking spears at elephants and cheetahs back in the day, as cavemen, we found that this is the most efficient way to propel an object with our arm. It's not rocket science in that regard. So what we're going to do first is we're going to shift our weight into our trailing leg. We're going to begin to rotate. You're going to learn that the takeaway movement is such a small, simple movement when you look at what rotary swing does. We're going to focus on this 2-inch shoulder blade glide that you've no doubt seen in my takeaway video at this point. And that little movement of my body is going to move the club about 6 feet. So I'm going to move 2 inches to move the club 6 feet. And then as I keep going from there, all I've got to do is the REF movement, rotation, elevation, flexion. And if I just do this with my arms as I go back to the top, all of a sudden the club, shocker, perfectly on plane. We'll look at this from down the line. So now I'm going to answer one of the really common questions we get all the time is the rotary swing a 1-plane or 2-plane swing? Well, the reality is we don't use those terms at all. Again, it goes back to this concept of personal preference or what an instructor's observed a bunch of golfers doing. The concept of swing plane in itself is defined so differently by so many people. People look at elbow planes and shaft planes and shoulder planes and arm planes and all of this stuff. Swing plane, as you'll learn in my swing fundamentals video, isn't even a fundamental of the golf swing. Now, that's going to sound crazy, but again, as you watch the video, you'll understand what fundamentals really are. But swing plane is incredibly important. It's one of the first things that we fix. But again, we fix the fundamental, the underlying cause of why your swing plane's off, not grab the club and try to set it and manipulate it into some position. So as far as being 1-plane or 2-plane, again, depends on how you define that. Are you talking about the position of your arm in relation to your shoulders at the top? Well, if you looked at it that way, rotary swing is going to be just a little bit above that shoulder plane because we're looking at it from a perspective of physics. We want leverage in the swing. The higher my arms are up as I go up, the more potential leverage I have in this club. If my arms are down here and I dropped it, there's just simply less leverage. If my arms are really high, I have a lot more potential energy. I have a lot more leverage in the swing. But at the same point, if my arms are really high and disconnected from my body can't rotate very aggressively in the downswing because my arms are going to be too high. We have to wait on them to drop. So we look at it for trying to be in the middle. We don't want a really shallow arm plane. I could rotate really hard and wouldn't have to wait on my arms, but that's going to put a lot more stress on my body, that rotational force on my spine. We don't need that, but we don't need our arms ridiculously high either, because then you really have to be patient during the transition. And I know patience isn't really the strong suit of most of us golfers, right? We want to get to the top here and go after it. So again, we're looking at it from the most efficient perspective on how our body's engineered to move the simplest, smallest movements humanly possible to get the club set appropriately at the top with to have enough leverage, to have enough power to hit the ball as far as humanly possible with as little effort. And that's really a critical part of rotary swing. So our arms going to be just above shoulder plane, give or take a little bit. Again, as you understand rotary swing, you understand that's a variable rather than a fundamental of the swing. You can have your arms a little higher, you can have your arms a little lower. They all don't matter. What we're primarily looking at is how we rotate around our spine and how we load up the trailing leg and the muscles in our core and our trunk. That's where the power comes from. So as you start doing this and you start learning, this is really the entire Rotary Swing Tour movement. If we look at it from face on, all I'm trying to get you to do is to rotate correctly, and this is it. And then if you add our rotation, elevation, flexion, all of a sudden, the golf swing's shockingly simple to get your arms to the right position at the top. You can't move any less than what I'm going to ask you to move. So now, let's take another look at, we've kind of got to the big picture of the backswing, let's look at the downswing stuff. Okay, so now we've made it to the top of the swing. Now how do we get down? What's Rotary Swing Tour all about? Well, again, it's about producing power as efficiently and safely as humanly possible. So to get down, the first thing we're going to do, again, just like every other motor movement that you've done in sports, the first thing you do is you shift your weight. When you go to the top and you're throwing a spear at an elephant to feed your family or throwing a ball to the catcher, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna stride with the lead leg forward and begin transferring weight while rotating your pelvis. Rotary swing follows those same fundamentals because, again, it's just the most efficient way to sequence these kinetic chain of movements in your body. So from the top, the first thing that we're gonna do is shift our weight back to the left, starting to load up the lower body, getting leverage from the ground. And then once we're shifted our weight, notice that I'm just trying to keep my back pointing at the target as long as humanly possible. You never try and unwind your shoulders in the downswing. And that's another big common misconception in the golf swing, is that people think that you should get to the top and spin your shoulders as fast and hard as you can. That's the last thing on earth that you would ever want to do, because all you're doing is creating a tremendous amount of centripetal force, and that's going to lead to centrifugal force that's going to act on the club and cause you to throw the club away or cast or lose lag. And lag is the primary generator of club head speed. The wrist angle between the shaft and your wrist, your forearm, that's the primary lever that you have in your swing to release the club with a lot of speed. It makes up about 2/3 of your club head speed. So when you go to the top and you spin your shoulders as fast as you can see even here going relatively slow, it's making the club want to throw out away from me. So instead, what you do in rotary swing is that you turn to the top and you're done. You feel like you keep your chest facing away from the target as long as humanly possible. Your arms are nice and soft and relaxed, because we want them to be able to move fast, but we want them to be moved by our big muscles. Our trunk, our core, is the primary mover in the downswing. So what we're really trying to do is use our legs, our glutes, our hamstrings, our quads, and our core, obliques, muscles in our abdominals, to start to unwind as we shift our weight, and that is what moves the club and moves your arms and your shoulders. So as we start down, we focus primarily from here down. That's the focus in the swing. So as we shift back to the left, notice I'm still keeping my shoulders shut in relationship to the target, and then I'm going to post up on my lead leg. And now this is really where the speed comes from in rotary swing. If I had to make one simple statement about it, is that you get power in the swing from your legs, and even more specifically, your lead leg, because this leg is not only helping you unwind your hips, which is helping unwind your shoulders, which is helping bring the club back to the ball, but it's also got an angle in it. My leg is bent, if we look at it this way, and as I push up against the ground, guess what that's going to do to the club? If my body's moving this way, up and down, it's going to force the club to move faster down. So this movement, as you post up, is what actually snaps the release of your wrist. You don't take your wrist and throw the club head at the ball. Your wrists are relatively passive. They're like essentially passive hinges, if you will. You don't have to actively use your hands to release the club and square the face up and all those things. RST is all about taking your hands out of the swing and letting the physics of what your body's doing and what the club's doing with the momentum that you've created to release the club for you. And so where your speed comes from, since you're not using your hands and arms, that's way too finicky to try and control that. You're using your big muscle and the power that you can generate from your powerful legs to help snap the club down. And so my hands, as I'm doing this, are relatively very relaxed. All the power is going to come from this posting up movement in the downswing. So none of this stuff, and of course I've become well known for discussing pushing versus pulling in the swing. Obviously the last thing we want to do is push really hard from this right side. It's going to create, again, this throwaway motion where we're losing lag in the downswing. And so all it creates tons and tons of problems in the swing, and you'll never swing faster than 92 miles an hour with your driver doing that. So we're going to keep our arms and hands quiet, shift, rotate, post up, and that's going to release the club for us. And from there, the rest of the swing doesn't really matter. The ball's already gone. We don't care what you do in your follow through. But the follow through, of course, is just a result of what you did throughout the whole first part of the swing. And so we can use it as a diagnostic tool. And that's really what we do in RST. We want to make sure that you've shifted your weight all the way over to the lead leg so that you can post up. You've got a lot of muscle mass, a lot of muscle fibers activated because there's weight over here. And so you can create a lot of leverage from the ground. So in a nutshell, that's what Rotary Swing Tour is really all about. Don't think about it in conventional terms the way that you think about the golf swing or all these conflicting ways that you've heard the golf swing taught. It's purely objective. We don't care what Tiger Woods did in his swing or Jack Nicklaus, all these guys. It doesn't matter. What matters is how is your body designed to create a golf swing movement as powerfully, safely, and efficiently as humanly possible, and it doesn't get any more powerful, safe, or efficient than Rotary Swing Tour.